What if I told you the Federal Reserve has been running the largest financial experiment in human history, and it's about to fail? Not might fail, not could fail, will fail. Right now, as you watch this, central banks across the world are quietly dumping U.S. Treasury bonds, the very foundation of the dollar's global dominance. And the Federal Reserve? They're not panicking, they're preparing. You feel it, don't you? Your grocery bill that's doubled since 2020. Your rent that climbs every year while your paycheck stays flat. The gnawing sense that something fundamental is breaking in the economy, but no one in power will say it out loud. That's not an accident. That's the end game. See, the dollar you work for, save in, and trust, it's not backed by gold, not backed by productivity. It's backed by a promise that's been broken before, and it's about to be broken again. The Federal Reserve just issued a warning, buried in their meeting minutes, hidden in bureaucratic language, but the message is clear. The system is on borrowed time, and 99% of people have no idea what's coming. Before we go deeper, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? I want to know how global this community is. And if you're here for the unfiltered truth they don't want you to hear, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to show you won't stay on YouTube forever. Let's decode the collapse they're not talking about.
To understand where we're headed, you need to understand how we got here. August 15th, 1971, President Richard Nixon appears on national television and announces that the United States will no longer convert dollars to gold. The Bretton Woods system, the framework that made the dollar the world's reserve currency, dies in a single Sunday night speech. Overnight, the dollar becomes pure fiat, no tangible backing, just trust. Trust in U.S. economic power, trust in military dominance, trust in the Federal Reserve to manage the money supply responsibly. Sound familiar? Because that same trust is exactly what your retirement account is built on right now. That same fiat currency, now 53 years deeper into the experiment. But here's what they don't teach you in economics class. Nixon didn't make that decision in a vacuum. By 1971, foreign governments, especially France under Charles de Gaulle, were already losing faith in the dollar. They were showing up at the Treasury's door with wheelbarrows of dollars, demanding the gold America had promised them. The U.S. was running out. The Vietnam War was bleeding the economy dry. Inflation was creeping up. So, rather than admit the empire was overextended, Nixon did what central planners always do. He changed the rules of the game. And it worked. For a while. The U.S. made a deal with Saudi Arabia and OPEC. Oil would only be sold in dollars. The petrodollar was born. Suddenly, every country on earth needed dollars to buy energy. Demand for the currency skyrocketed. America could print money, export inflation, and live beyond its means because the entire world was trapped in the system. Sound familiar? Because that's exactly what's been happening for the last 2 decades. The Federal Reserve has printed over $8 trillion since the 2008 financial crisis. They've held interest rates at near zero for a decade, inflating asset bubbles in stocks, real estate, and bonds. They told you it was to stimulate the economy. But stimulate for who? Not you, not the middle class watching their purchasing power evaporate. The wealth went to the top. To the financial institutions with access to Fed liquidity windows, to the BlackRocks and JP Morgans who could borrow at 0% and buy everything. And here's the kicker. They knew this couldn't last. In 2019, months before COVID, the repo market seized up. Banks stopped trusting each other. Overnight lending rates spiked to 10%. The Federal Reserve had to step in with emergency injections of $75 billion per day just to keep the system from imploding. Did you hear about that on the news? Did they explain that the financial system almost collapsed in September 2019, a full 6 months before the pandemic? No, because that would require admitting the truth. The post-1971 dollar system is fundamentally unstable. Now, fast forward to 2020. COVID hits. The Fed's response? Prinked $4.8 trillion in 18 months. The largest monetary expansion in world history. They called it emergency stimulus. But look at the fine print. Look at who got bailed out. Corporations, banks, hedge funds, the primary dealers who have direct access to Fed liquidity windows. Sound familiar? Because this is the exact same playbook from 2008. Privatize the profits, socialize the losses. And the American public? You got a $1,200 check and were told to be grateful while your cost of living exploded. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Since 2022, something unprecedented is starting to happen. Foreign central banks, the same institutions that have propped up dollar demand for 50 years, have begun selling U.S. Treasuries. China dumped $300 billion in Treasury holdings between 2021 and 2023. Japan, the largest foreign holder, has been quietly reducing its position. Saudi Arabia, the cornerstone of the petrodollar, just entered a security agreement with China and is now accepting yuan for oil sales. Read that again. The petrodollar is dying. And the Federal Reserve? They're not trying to stop it. They're managing it. In their own meeting minutes from March 2023, Fed officials discussed managed transitions and digital alternatives to the current dollar system. They're planning the next phase. And that phase doesn't include the financial freedom you think you have.
So what's really happening behind the curtain? This is where it gets wild. The mechanism the Federal Reserve is using, the one that's going to trigger the 2025 collapse, isn't some new invention. It's been hiding in plain sight since March 2020. It's called the Standing Repo Facility and the Reverse Repo Facility. I know, sounds boring, technical, the kind of jargon they use specifically so you won't pay attention. But here's what it actually is. A pressure release valve on a system that's already exploded. Every single day, major financial institutions park trillions of dollars overnight with the Federal Reserve through the reverse repo program. At its peak in 2022, this number hit $2.5 trillion every single night. Why? Because those institutions, money market funds, banks, hedge funds, have so much cash sloshing around the system that there's literally nowhere safe to put it. Treasury bonds? Yields were too low for years, and now they're too volatile. Lend to other banks? Too risky. So they park it with the Fed and earn a guaranteed return. But here's the conspiracy. This facility was never supposed to be permanent. It was an emergency tool. The fact that it's now a structural pillar of the financial system tells you everything. The Fed has created a liquidity addiction. The entire economy is now dependent on overnight Fed support just to function. And in 2023, they started pulling back. The reverse repo balance has dropped from 2.5 trillion to under 500 billion as of late 2024. Where did that money go? Not into the real economy, not into productive business investment. It went into stock buybacks, executive bonuses, cryptocurrency speculation, luxury real estate. The rich got their exit liquidity, and now the trap is set. Because when that reverse repo facility hits zero, when there's no more overnight Fed support cushioning the system, the real dollar crisis begins. The name behind the architectural design of this controlled demolition? You won't believe who signed off on the 2020 emergency facility expansion and the 2023 taper timeline. The receipt is wilder than you think. But before I reveal the exact mechanism of how this collapse will unfold, and I'm talking about the step-by-step financial engineering that's going to wipe out trillions in savings, I need you to do something. If this is already blowing your mind, hit that like button right now. The algorithm suppresses this kind of content, and your engagement is the only way this reaches more people. And here's the thing. What I'm about to show you in part 2 is the most important section, the deep dive into exactly how the engineered collapse works, the 5 steps they're using, the specific numbers they don't want you to see, and the digital dollar endgame that turns money into a control system. Part 2 is live right now, link in the description and pinned in the comments. Don't wait. Don't assume you'll come back later. The next 10 minutes will change how you see money forever. I'll see you in part 2.